Hi, it's Lee, and welcome to the Tester Economist. Alright, this has been on my mind a bit lately, so I imagine if I'm thinking about it, then a lot of you probably are too. So I wanted to run through my thought process about Tesla as an investment right now, with everything going on with inflation, the Fed, economy, and US dollar. The Fed appear to be going no holds barred when it comes to inflation, doing whatever it takes to reduce aggregate demand in the economy. Jerome Powell isn't interested at all about what Congress can do to improve supply, like reducing regulation when it comes to energy. Powell and the Fed just want to focus on demand, as supply will take too long. If we start investing in the likes of infrastructure and education, there's going to be a massive delay there until it's felt in the economy. The Fed are set on nipping this in the bud ASAP and appear dead serious to sort it out fast, before the time the government's treasury bonds come up for renewal at rates that they cannot afford and would thus need to borrow more money to roll them over, thus resulting in more inflation, etc. Yes, it's quite the pickle the economy is in. Right now, America's biggest export is inflation, and as they control the global reserve currency, they have this ability to make the rest of the world also pay for their inflation. If you thought things in Europe couldn't get any worse, then their US debt has just increased, with the euro reaching about a 20-year low. The US could end up creating a global recession or even depression if they push too hard. They're going to push this hard until they start breaking things in the economy. Businesses will start to go under, homes foreclosed on, jobs lost, markets crash. Elon says recessions are a necessary part of the economic cycle, even referring to them as an economic enema, as you end up with companies like Rivian being worth $120 billion. There's a good chance they will never hit that valuation again. Elon says the situation gets out of control. The economy has misallocation of human capital, where people are doing things that are silly and not useful to their fellow human beings. The question is, how hard should the economy be pushed? How much is necessary to break before we can pivot back out of this insanity? If too much is broken, then it's terribly difficult to restart it. Even with 0% interest rates and more money printing, it doesn't work like that. On top of that, we have other out of control issues like Ukraine. It's almost like World War. Russia using energy, the US using currency. We just need to hope that China doesn't try and enter it, controlling our technology. Everyone is worried about what's happening in the world. The markets are reacting, but not crashing too extreme. In the global financial crisis, the Nasdaq dropped almost 50% from its high. Right now, we're down about 30%, but that was more an inflated property market. I tend to mention the global financial crisis as it's the crash that I have experienced the most hands-on in the past and learn from, but I think the best way to liken this scenario would be more like what we saw in the early 80s, with inflation then and interest rates going up to around 20%, with the then Federal Reserve Chairman, Paul Volcker. Inflation rates were higher then, and again, this was brought on by an oil crisis too. However, the Fed hadn't just printed a ton load of dollars into the economy, and there wasn't as much national debt, so the government could actually afford higher rates. And they did eventually break the back of inflation, but the recession did last a couple of years. So what is the best investment right now? Well, in any economy, I always like to invest in what I know, either way. Of course, Tesla is the investment I am most familiar with, but is the market going to keep crashing? There's so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt right now everywhere. Are we listening to the media's portrayal of what's actually happening in the world? We have evidently seen them be so wrong about Tesla for so long. Do we suddenly seem to think that they have an idea of what will actually happen with the macro environment? Are we scared and just want some answers from whoever will give them to us? But if you sold some shares and held some cash, is that actually any better? If everything is inflating, then that's simply another term for cash crashing. Is it worth risking investing in cash when there is still likely more inflation on the way? What about all the money that's been printed that still has to end up in the economy somewhere? What about when interest rates drop? They have to, because the government can't afford their debt at these rates. Unless they renege on their treasuries, which I don't think is likely, it would kill the dollar. So, is Tesla the best investment? Well, if it's what you know the best, then I wouldn't suggest you suddenly start buying into other stocks. The way I see it is, people won't stop completely buying cars in any economy. Tesla has no problem dropping prices in order to meet demand, which with additional supply, they may very well need to do. Their costs have reduced significantly in Shanghai due to these line upgrades. Their costs will reduce even further when they can use their new production techniques from their new facilities. The US are dropping the costs a further $7,500 per vehicle again. If the economy is bad, then raw material costs will drop. Commodity prices. Tesla can negotiate new contracts at better rates. Tesla can make massive long-term deals with other partners, as their competition is having enough trouble just staying alive, let alone thinking about massive growth over the next 10 years. Tesla may have the entire battlefield to themselves. What about the Chinese EVs? Will everyone buy these lower cost versions instead of Teslas? Well, if sales are down for Tesla, they'd be down for the Chinese too. Except the issues for the Chinese face is that they weren't profitable when the economy was red hot. So they're simply going to lose even more money now. They won't be able to afford to double down and take a massive market share, especially harder if Tesla is also reducing their prices too. I have been warning us about protecting ourselves for a potential crash since as early as December. If you recall, I was talking about buying some puts in GM as a hedge to cover myself. If you recall, I said I was going to buy enough so that if GM did crash, which it did, 50%, there'd be enough profit for me to cover my mortgage for a few years in case things were really bad. I had a bad experience from the global financial crisis, which I never wanted to risk going back to, but it's all very well saying I was going to. But unfortunately, I got too bullish on Tesla and decided to roll the dice one more time with some extra options, and was going to use that profit from them to buy the puts in GM, but I lost on them. But I did end up selling some of my leaps early enough with a decent enough profit that I actually do have enough to cover my mortgage for 3 more years, by which time rates have hopefully recovered and the entire economy is looking promising again. I made quite a few videos on trying to protect yourself for the potential of these sorts of events. It was when the stock was around 1100 to 1200, but not everyone is all in as much as me. Over 50% of my net worth is in Tesla, the remaining being my business and house. Anyway, some people have been saying that the smart money now is to sell your shares. Well, to be honest, I think the smart money would have already sold. So I am not at all trying to tell you what you should do with your investments or money. That's solely up to you. You know what's best for you entirely. I'm just telling you what I have done. I've put aside some emergency money, cut back on a few other expenses too, and I feel I'm in a comfortable enough position to hold my shares through the next year or two if things are rough. My point is that even if you didn't feel the economy is going well, that doesn't mean cash is the right place to invest either. There doesn't seem to be any safe place to put your money right now. Even gold is down 25%. But I really would love to hear all your thoughts on what I have said and get your view on what you think is happening too. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.